Hey guys, my name is Juan and today I'm going to be sharing my experience growing up in Canada as an immigrant. That's everything from my first week in Canada to school life in Canada to the social aspect of growing up in Canada as an immigrant. I immigrated to Canada in 1994, so my experience could be a little bit different, but I do hope that this video will shed some light on what your child could experience when they immigrate to Canada. Before we go any further, don't forget to like and subscribe. If you're new here, I mostly give immigration information for those who want to move to Canada, as well as show homes specifically in Calgary, Alberta, just so that you guys can get a feeling for what homes cost. And with that, let's get to the video. So my first day in Canada, actually I don't remember too much of, because after we landed, I kind of broke my mom's heart. At the end of the day, I go up to her and I say, "Mom, are we going home now?" And then she had to explain that we were staying in Canada for good. As a kid, I didn't quite understand it. And then that first week in Canada, I actually got really sick and depressed. And I just have no recollection of that moment at all, right? From my perspective, we arrived in Canada and I loved it. But yeah, my mom says that I got really sick. And for that 1 week, I just have this gap in memory, which is odd for me because I do have memory since when I was 2 years old. So yeah, I guess obviously moving to a different country as a child can be a really shocking experience. But I should say though, that looking back, it was really a positive one. You know, the house we were in, I loved it there. I had my brother there. I had some cousins there over time. I made friends with the kids around the community. So as a kid, I had a lot of fun. So when I arrived, I was so young that actually there wasn't that long of a period of time that I didn't know English. It really felt like as soon as we started watching TV, maybe a week later, like we already knew what was going on television. You know, we could understand English way before our parents could fluently understand it. And what's funny is that as a kid, you don't really have the concept of language dialed in that much. For me, it was just that I could understand the TV and I could understand Spanish. It wasn't like this separate thing. So it's kind of funny, when I went on my first day of school, my dad taught me this one phrase. He just said, "Oh, you can ask, do you speak English?" And then yes or no. So even though I already knew how to speak English, for some reason on the first day of class, I went around to every kid on the playground during recess, and I would just go up and ask, "Hi, do you speak English?" And they would say yes. And then I say, "Okay." And then I just walk off and go talk to the next kid to ask the exact same question. There's also this program in school called ESL class. It stands for English Second Language. Basically all it is like this extracurricular class that mostly immigrants would go to. Basically anybody who has trouble speaking English, especially if it's a second language, like the name says. But because I immigrated so young, really I was in the class as a technicality, and after 1 week they told me I didn't need to come back. And most other young kids my age that had immigrated had the same experience. If anybody stayed in that class for a really long period of time, it was usually because they immigrated while they were like in grade 5 or 6. So, you know, learning a language is a lot different. It's not as intuitive and natural when you get older, right? So probably the biggest memory I have of growing up in school, like the biggest kind of like shocking moment for me that I didn't realize was that big a deal at the time, was I was in kindergarten, so I was just 5 years old, and my teacher asks me if I would like to be referred to as Juan, which is my name, or John. And I didn't really understand the question. I just said, "But I'm Juan, you know, like, so I'm Juan." And then she says, "Okay." And I remember regretting that decision for so much of my life. I really wish I would have just said John, because Juan, while it's a really common name in South America and in Latin communities, it's pretty rare in Canada. So my name got mispronounced all the time, like Juan. I'm basically just known as Juan, which is why I have the name Wonderful World for my YouTube channel, because it just sounds like the word wonderful. But as I got older, like probably around the age of 20, is when I really appreciated that I did keep that name, that I kept my name Juan. So that is one thing though that your child might have to deal with, is that if their name is hard for Canadians to pronounce, they're definitely gonna feel something about that name, or maybe they wish they just had an easier name like Zach or Steve or Cody, you know. But you know, my message to them would be just stick to your name, and over time, like, trust me, you're gonna be glad that you stuck to your name. So going through the school system is actually, because Canada has so many immigrants and we have so many different types of cultures here, it's really clear, it's almost obvious that it would happen, but a lot of cliques start to form, right? So you would have like your Spanish clique. It's just like a big group of Spanish immigrants. You know, your Filipinos would all be together. Generally, your East Asians would be together. Indians would be together. You know, like, you start to have cliques. Because I immigrated so young, I actually didn't hang out with my like Latino clique, because I guess I just couldn't relate. By that time, I was already in Canada for so long that I just hung out with whoever. For me, it was mostly Filipinos, but still, yeah, there was still that aspect of cultural cliques. It's just something that would naturally happen in school, and it was never really a negative thing. It was mostly just an obvious thing to happen, I guess, because if you're an immigrant and your friends are immigrants, they're, you know, your parents might be hanging out together, and it just kind of like, it just one thing on top of the other, you just start becoming friends. Maybe you see each other at church or some other place like TNT, the Asian market, you know, and you start seeing each other around life, and then you become friends. I don't think my experience is really representative of everybody in Canada, but for me, I didn't really have to deal with a ton of racism. Sure, there was like the innocent or maybe naive, like unknowing kind of racism, where somebody might say a certain thing, like not knowing that it could be seen as racism, as especially nowadays in 2020. But back then, yeah, it's not like anybody ever came up to me out of nowhere and was like, hey, you, like, racial slur. I don't want to say the racial slur for Spanish people on the channel, but that never really happened, you know. But I will say actually that there was some bullying, some cultural bullying in school, but that's like really young, like grade 2, grade 3. To me, looking back at it, it's almost akin to like picking on somebody because they have glasses, you know. Like, if it happens, kids are always gonna find some reason to do it. Different cultures, just another reason. But yeah, I think growing up in Canada, of course, no country is immune to racism, but me personally, I didn't have to deal with it too much. For me, I don't actually have that much experience, obviously, with schools in other countries, but going off of what my brother said, he was in grade 1 when we immigrated from Peru to Canada, and he was saying that Canadian school is actually really easy in comparison. Like, he was already doing multiplication and division, but here they were still learning like the basics of addition and subtraction. So there is a difference there. Growing up in Canada, I never really felt like the curriculum was... I definitely felt that it was easy, but I never felt that it was so easy that it would hurt you. If you're curious, I went to school for a physics major, and I did study abroad in Japan and Korea, so I did get some experience learning at other universities, and it never really felt like my Canadian education was too easy and didn't prepare me enough to go to school in other countries. So I would say that the level here is relaxed. That's definitely true, but I think it's still good enough. And of course, if you want your child really to excel, and if maybe they're a gifted child, there's always extracurricular classes that you can take. There's always more that you can do here. And it should also be noted that I went to a public school. I actually went to the Catholic school board. But obviously you could go to a private school, you could go to a ton of different schools to cater to what your child needs. That is a really good question. Actually, I feel like growing up here most of my life, I do consider myself a Canadian. I really have no attachments to Peru besides it being a beautiful country and it being where much of my family still resides in. But in terms of national pride, I would say that I am more Canadian than Peruvian. Because obviously most of my memories are here. You know, Peru is where I was born and I will always appreciate that. But as an immigrant growing up, you know, there is that part of me that's just going to be Canadian. What I should say though is that I'm a bit lucky because I immigrated so young, so it's easy for me to form a cultural identity with Canada. However, others who have immigrated later in life or maybe who have gone back and forth, they've told me that in their experience, it does feel like they don't really fully belong anywhere. And by that, I mean that as let's say I had been in Peru until like the age of 16. So I really identified as a Peruvian, and then I come to Canada. I would always be that Peruvian Canadian, you know, like Peruvian first, Canadian second. And if your child is in that scenario, it might be tough for them to form that cultural identity because you're either a Canadian that's not fully a Canadian, and then if you go back to Peru, you know, you're not really a Peruvian anymore because you've been gone for so long. So it's always hard to juggle those two things. So you kind of end up in this unique cultural identity, which is honestly, I think is better anyways. It's just more of a global identity, which is great for Canada because we honestly have so many different cultures here that it's really, you can still tell who's like just arrived to Canada, but it is tough. It is really hard. There's just so many different cultures here that it just becomes this big mix of different types of people. There's sometimes when I'm curious what my life would have been like, or maybe if I would have turned out to be a different person if I had grown up fully in Peru, because in Peru people have such like a love of life. Like they're very outgoing and very extroverted, and me, I'm a bit more introverted, you know, which is why I make YouTube videos. I'm not in front of a crowd, it's just me and the camera, but that's merely a curiosity. There's really never been a point where I've regretted coming here. I'm really glad my parents made the choice because now that I am here, what I do for my day job in my career is a passion. It's basically just one of my, it's a job that I love doing, and the fact that I get paid for it, to me, it blows my mind every single week. And then, you know, I have the space and opportunity to make YouTube videos because I enjoy making YouTube videos, and my partner and I are always thinking up other ways that we can maybe have fun and make some money as well. I guess what I'm trying to say is at the end of the day, I am glad that my parents immigrated to Canada. I'm glad that I got the opportunity to grow up here because really everybody here, in my opinion, has the quality of life to really just enjoy life. Like it really feels like that's what it's all about here. It's just finding what you like to do and enjoy it. You know, in my experience, having memories of Peru and seeing what a quality of life in a different country can look like, I would say that Canada is a really great place to live in. Anyways, that's it, guys. I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I hope it maybe gives you some information of what your child may go through immigrating through Canada. If you haven't already, please like and subscribe. As I said before, I make videos mostly with immigration information to Canada, as well as I do show home tours of houses here in Calgary, Alberta, in case you're curious of what houses are worth here in Canada. And with that, I hope you guys have a great day and a great life. Take care.